Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Here today with the sequel to my 10 bold predictions video that I made a few weeks ago. A ton of y'all loved that video and asked for me to make more, so I decided to make one bold prediction for every single NBA franchise this season. Some are a bit more bold than others, but I think each of these is, I would consider it somewhat of a bold prediction. The chance that all of these happens is literally 0, and probably about only 5 will. So let's go ahead and see what mistakes I can make. Leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy. Comment a bold prediction below. Let's get into it. Starting off with the Philadelphia 76ers, this is a take I had in the past video too, but I kind of wanted to put it out there again because I really think that James Harden could bounce back into MVP conversations. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year this upcoming season. I think him and Joel Embiid are going to be one of the best duos in the league, maybe even the best in the entire league. He's got a lot of talent around him with Tyrese Maxey, Embiid of course, Tobias Harris, and I think PJ Tucker adds another element too as a guy he can kick out to. He's a defensive player that can get steals and he can push it in transition. I just am really high on this Sixers team, and I think James Harden is going to have a huge bounce back season. He's been working really hard in the offseason. It seems like he's going to come back in a big way from his hamstring injury, and he is going to be in those MVP conversations throughout the season. Next up, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think that Jrue Holiday could be in Defensive Player of the Year conversations. The reason is because Marcus Smart just winning Defensive Player of the Year, I feel like it's kind of broken down the barrier between guards and bigs in terms of who wins Defensive Player of the Year. For a long time, it's been you have to be like a wing or a big, but now that Marcus Smart has won it, I feel like we could see the floodgates open a bit where guards start to get more respect for Defensive Player of the Year conversations. Jrue Holiday is a guy who has been basically underrated his entire career, especially defensively. He still is potentially the best defensive guard in the league, and I think the Bucks, with Giannis, Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton back and healthy, there's a chance that the Bucks could be one of the best defenses in the league. And now that Marcus Smart has kind of broken down that barrier, I think Jrue Holiday could get the respect that he deserves and be in those conversations. For the Chicago Bulls, I've got that Nikola Vucevic doesn't stay on the roster past the trade deadline. This might not be super bold because it feels like Vucevic's time in Chicago should be up sooner than later due to his poor play as of last season, but I think that the reason it is kind of bold is because who do they trade him to? There aren't many centers out there in the market, but I think Vucevic is going to find a new home by the deadline. I think the Chicago Bulls are going to struggle a bit to start the season with Lonzo Ball hurt, and so they're going to enter kind of panic mode and think, okay, we need to make a move. Vucevic seems like to me the clearest option to move. Maybe him and Patrick Williams are paired together to make an upgrade at the center position, someone more defensive minded, which they could really use. And if they do so, then Chicago could improve in a big way. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I have that Cleveland is in the mix for home court advantage over the course of the season and potentially ends up top 4 in the East. This might not be bold to some people, but I've seen a lot of people say, in critique of the Donovan Mitchell trade that, oh, it doesn't matter because the Cavs can't compete this year. Why can't they? They've got Darius Garland, who's an all-star, Jarrett Allen, who's an all-star, Donovan Mitchell, who's an all-star. That's 3 right there. They've got Evan Mobley, who I think could be in all defensive conversations as soon as this year. They've got a cast of great role players too. Why can't the Cavs be one of the best teams in the East this upcoming season? I've got a lot of faith in them. They were towards the top of the playoff picture last season when healthy. I think they repeat that feat this year and are right there in the mix for home court advantage all season long. For the Boston Celtics, I have that they finish outside the top 3 in the East, which seems a bit absurd. They just, made it to the finals and they improved their roster. But this whole Ime Udoka coaching situation, I think, is going to put a little bit of a cloud over things. I'm not sure how Joe Mazzulla is going to step in as their head coach. I don't know if we're going to see them fall back to their old ways where Ime Udoka really got them kind of playing as a team. We've seen the Celtics fall into kind of some isolation heavy basketball in the past, so we'll see if they fall back into that. And then also now Robert Williams is going to be out 8 to 12 weeks with a surgery. They're going to have a really slow start, which didn't hurt them at all last season, but I think just in terms of seeding, it could hurt them. I still think that when playoff time comes around, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league and it's going to be hard to beat them. But in terms of regular season success, I think the Celtics have a regression. For the Los Angeles Clippers, I have that they're going to be dominant when everyone plays. They've got the deepest roster in the league, the best roster in the league on paper, incredibly deep. Luke Kennard, Marcus Morris, Zubats, John Wall, Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann, Nick Batum, alongside Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They have Tyronn Lue as their head coach. They're such a good team top to bottom that I think that when everyone plays, it's going to be really hard to beat them on any given night. Of course, the issue with the Clippers is how often are they going to be healthy? And I think that's the biggest obstacle to them winning a championship. On paper, I think they have the best roster in the league, and when they're fully healthy, very few teams are going to be able to beat them, in my opinion. For the Memphis Grizzlies, I have that they're going to be in the mix for the play-in tournament basically all season, which might be shocking because they were just one of the best teams in the West. They're young, they should only get better, but because of Jaren Jackson Jr.'s injury to start the season, plus the fact that they won a lot of games without Ja Morant last year, which if Ja gets hurt, it's going to be hard to replicate that type of success. I think they're just in for some natural regression in terms of record, plus the Western Conference just got a lot better around them. I think missing those early games without Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to hurt their ability to stay afloat in the standings compared to this stacked conference that's ahead of them. So I think they're going to hover right around that 5, 6, maybe even 7 seed for a lot of the season. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Grizzlies are in the play-in tournament, which would be a shock. But at the same time, even if the Grizzlies are in the play-in tournament, they could make a deep run still because that's how good they are. I just think in terms of regular season success, injuries, and natural regression is going to take them down a couple notches. For the Atlanta Hawks, I have that they're going to add another all-star caliber player during the season. I don't know who this is. This is not part of the bold prediction because that would be an even bolder prediction, but I think that they've got kind of a good setup for that. Like I said in my past video, I'm not the highest on this Trae Young, DeJounte Murray backcourt. I think they're really good, but I think it's going to take some time to gel when it does work out. And so I think they could start off the season pretty slow. And now that the Hawks have committed 3 first-round picks to DeJounte Murray, they're not going to wait around. If they start pretty slow, I think they end up moving either John Collins or Clint Capella, plus some more picks, plus maybe a young guy on their roster for another piece that could help them out as an all-star caliber player. The Eastern Conference is deep. I still think the Hawks need another piece to truly contend, and I wouldn't be surprised if a slow start kind of catalyzes that. Once again, I don't know what this player would be or, where they're going to come from, but just keep an eye on the Hawks. For the Miami Heat, I have that they explore trading Tyler Hero at the deadline. Hero is up for a massive bag this upcoming offseason, and I'm not sure if the Heat are going to be willing to pay that. I think they see him long-term as their 6th man, and it's clear that he doesn't see that way. He's talked in the past about wanting to start for them, but it just feels like there's kind of a disconnect there, and he's by far their best trade asset. They didn't have a great offseason. They lost some talent. And right now it feels like they're kind of on the outside looking in when it goes next to like the top teams in the Eastern Conference. So I wouldn't be surprised if some player becomes available. Tyler Hero is dangled at the trade deadline as bait, and maybe even this time he gets moved. For the Charlotte Hornets, I have that LaMelo Ball is going to enter trade rumors over the course of this season. Now, whether or not he gets traded, I don't think he does, but I think his name's going to start to come up in some league circles. I wouldn't be surprised if he put some pressure on the front office because they just had an abysmal offseason. Losing Miles Bridges wasn't their fault, but they didn't go and make any upgrades at center. They brought in Mark Williams, who I think could be good in a few years, but he's not going to be good right away. They've still got Plumlee. They still can't play defense. They've got Rozier and Hayward, who are fine, but Hayward's always hurt. And Rozier, while he's good, he's not enough to help LaMelo make this team more than a bottom feeder in the Eastern Conference. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if LaMelo puts a bit of pressure on the front office and his name starts to circulate a bit. I don't think a trade is imminent or anything, but keep an eye on the Hornets. For the Jazz, I'm going to go with the fact that Colin Sexton will average over 25 points per game. There's no real scorers on that roster outside of him and Jordan Clarkson, and I don't think Clarkson's on the team for long. There's like defenders and like a Jared Vanderbilt out there, Walker Kessler. I think Sexton's going to have to score the basketball a ton. He might put up 25 points per game on like 42% shooting or something, as the Jazz are going to be really bad, but averaging over 25 is very possible for Sexton this season. For the Sacramento Kings, I think that De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis emerge as one of the best duos in the league. They were really good last season at the end of the year when they played alongside each other. A lot of really fun dribble handoffs and pick and rolls. I'm excited to see what these two can do together now that they've got more talent too, with Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk as some shooters that can stretch the floor. I really like the way the Kings offseason went. I'm still not sure if they make the playoffs because the West is super deep, but right now they're in better position than they've been in years, and I think that duo is going to be a big reason why they make that push. On the other side, for the New York Knicks, I'm going to go with the fact that they're going to miss the play-in tournament, which would be a big disappointment for a team that just barely missed it this past year, and they added Jalen Brunson this past offseason. but I still think the Knicks are kind of on the outside looking in. I think it's going to take a bit of time for all of their guys to gel. You know, Jalen Brunson coming in as a lead ball handler. How's he going to look right off the bat? I think Julius Randle could have a bit of a bounce back season, but he's still kind of iffy. There's just a lot going on over there in New York, and I think there's a lot of high expectations. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Thibodeau gets fired, which was a prediction I made in my last video, because I think the Knicks could start off kind of slow. And in the Eastern Conference, you can't afford to start slow. Teams continuously get better, and so I think they might just barely miss the cut. For the Lakers, I'm going to go with that Russell Westbrook plays out the whole season on the roster, which I'm sure Lakers fans aren't going to be happy to hear. I just don't see many deals out there anymore. You know, there was the one with the Pacers with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, but apparently they're out on that. And the Lakers seem really reluctant to move those 2 first-round picks that are required to make a Russell Westbrook trade happen. So I just don't think it happens. I think they play out this year. Maybe they're disappointing and they end up moving him at the deadline because they just have to. But at that point, like, his contract's going to expire anyways. Why give up those 2 first-round picks when you can kind of just let his contract expire? You have more salary cap space then, and, you know, maybe you bring in another star free agent. I just don't see them finding a better package than what they've already seen, and they didn't do those, so I don't think they do anything. For the Orlando Magic, I'm going to go with the fact that they have an all-star this season. I think there's a couple names in particular that I'm looking at: Wendell Carter Jr. and Franz Wagner. I think either of those 2 guys could be an all-star in their seasons. Wendell Carter Jr. was really good to end the last year, and he's a guy that I feel like has kind of gone under the radar a bit. If the Magic shock the world and make a play-in push, which I think they could with the addition of Paolo Banchero, then he's a guy that I think could come up in some of those conversations. Same with Franz Wagner, who was incredible last season. I think he's got the potential for a huge second-year leap, and I think that there is a potential that there's someone representing Orlando in the All-Star game in Utah this upcoming season. For the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic is going to average a triple-double, and that might not seem that absurd when you play 2K and stuff like that, but there have been very few players in NBA history who have averaged a triple-double. Russell Westbrook and Oscar Robertson, 2 guys who come to mind, but Luka Doncic, I think, has that potential. With Jalen Brunson no longer alongside him as a lead guard, he's going to have even more playmaking duties. He's going to grab more rebounds, I think, too. I just expect Luka to have an incredible season statistically, and I think that leads him to a triple-double average. He was pretty close this past season, but I think this is the year that he finally does it. Probably one of many years where he could do so. For the Brooklyn Nets, I'm going to say that Ben Simmons actually shoots threes. I know, I'm taking the bait. This is a mistake. I'm going to be wrong. I understand that, but these are bold predictions. And I don't think there's anything bolder than saying that Ben Simmons will actually start shooting threes at this point, but I'm going to say he does. I think with all the criticisms that he's gotten these past 2 off seasons, Ben Simmons is going to take those to heart, finally start shooting threes, and it's going to open up the game for Brooklyn a lot. Fingers crossed. For Denver, now this isn't a crazy bold take. I think they finish as the 1 seed out west. They've got Nikola Jokic, the 2-time MVP. They're going to get back Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, who are coming off injuries, so they could start a bit slow, but I just trust in Jokic so much to get those guys going quickly. I love the acquisitions they made of Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the offseason. I think they're going to have a great season. I think that Nikola Jokic is once again in MVP conversations, although I don't think he wins it because of voter fatigue, but this Nuggets team is going to be incredibly dangerous. For the Indiana Pacers, I'm going to say that they have 3 most improved player candidates. Tyrese Halliburton, of course, is a lot of people's pick to win the award. That's not a very bold one. I also think Jalen Smith could be in those conversations, a former top lottery pick out of Phoenix, coming over to Indiana. Now that he's here, he's going to have a lot more opportunities. He might start at the power forward position, and I think Tyrese Halliburton can unlock his game a lot. And then I'm going to go with Miles Turner. I think Turner, having a playmaker like Tyrese who can also score the ball the way he does, I think it's going to open up his game a lot, and I think they're going to give him some freedom to kind of go ahead and do what he does. I think he's going to once again be one of the top shot blockers in the league, improve his scoring averages, and could have a little bit of talk in those conversations. For the New Orleans Pelicans, I think that Zion Williamson is in MVP talks all throughout the season. I think the Pelicans could be in for a Grizzlies type jump where they're one of the top 3 teams out west. I made a whole video talking about why Zion could be in MVP conversations, so if you want to see that, go check that out. But basically, he averaged 27 on 60% shooting in his sophomore season. He's a monster. The Pelicans are going to be really good, and that is a recipe for him being an MVP player. For the Detroit Pistons, I'm going to say that they make the play-in tournament. They've got Cade Cunningham and Jay Ivey as a really fun backcourt. Sadiq Bey is a really solid 3-and-D type guy. You've got Jalen Duren, who's going to be coming off the bench, but he is a lob threat now for those 2 point guards. You've got, of course, Beef Stew at the 4 or at the 5. You've got Marvin Bagley, who's playing well, and they just added Bojan Bogdanovic from the Utah Jazz, who isn't going to do anything crazy, but he just gives them a solid scorer and floor spacer. I think they had a good offseason. I'm excited to see what they do. And I think if Cade Cunningham takes a leap like most people think he could, they're going to be right there in the thick of it to make the play-in tournament. For the Toronto Raptors, I'm going to say that OG Anunoby is traded within the season. He kind of feels like, to me, the most expendable player on their roster in terms of fit. They've got their point guard in Fred VanVleet. They've got Gary Trent Jr. at the 2. They've got Barnes, who's kind of a 3 or a 4. And I think that kind of makes OG Anunoby a bit expendable. I don't see them having any crazy long-term success with Pascal Siakam at the 5. I just think that they need kind of a bigger presence, whether it is off the bench or starting there. And so I could see OG Anunoby being used as a really valuable trade asset to move Scotty Barnes over to the 3, Pascal over to the 4, and they go out and acquire some type of center. Now, I don't know who that is, but I think OG Anunoby could be on the trade block. For the Houston Rockets, I'm going to say that Jabari Smith really struggles offensively in his rookie season, but he is going to be one of the best defensive rookies we've seen in a while. I think he's going to be up there in the tier of guys like Matisse Thybulle, who is a monster right out the gate. He's going to be the guy that basically anchors the Rockets defense at the 3 or the 4 position. He can guard out on the perimeter. He can guard down low. He's going to block shots, get in passing lanes. I think his offense could struggle because they don't have a really high level playmaking point guard. They have Kevin Porter Jr., who's been decent at that position, but he's not this high level playmaker yet. I think that once they add a guy like that, it's going to unlock Jabari Smith's game a lot more. But I think for right now, he's going to be an incredible defender. The offense might take a bit to come along, but I think defensively, he's going to lock people up. For the San Antonio Spurs, I'm going to say that they win less than 15 games. It might seem a bit harsh for a Greg Popovich coach team. They just don't have a lot of talent right now. They've got some fun guys like Malachi Branham and Jeremy Sohan, who they got in the draft. They've got, of course, Keldon Johnson. They've got Devin Vassell. Some fun, young, intriguing pieces for the future, but for right now, I don't think that they translate into many wins with DeJounte Murray being gone. I also think Jakob Poeltl could get dealt pretty soon, whether it's in the offseason or to start the year. He's just too valuable, and I think the Spurs are really looking at the top prospects in this draft, so I think the Spurs are going to be really bad. For the Suns, I think DeAndre Ayton will be in conversations to win Most Improved Player. I think Chris Paul is going to take a bit more of a backseat offensively than he already has as he continues to get older, and I think Ayton starts to be focused a bit more. I think the Suns realized that they kind of got too reliant on their 2 guards over the course of last season. They need to give DeAndre Ayton more opportunities to excel and grow over the course of the regular season, so he's ready for the playoffs. I think he's going to get those chances. I think he's going to potentially be an all-star, and he's going to be one of the most improved players in the league. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm going to say that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is in all NBA conversations. I'm not saying he makes it because I don't know if we're going to be good enough. I'm a Thunder fan, by the way, so very biased take. But I don't think we're going to necessarily be good enough to really get him into those conversations. But I think he has an incredible season, puts up ridiculous numbers, is an all-star, and if it weren't for the lack of team success, he would probably be on an all-NBA team this season. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, I have that they're going to be in the fight for the 1 seed all the way down to the wire. They have a great big 3 in Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, and Anthony Edwards, and I think Gobert is a perfect piece to add to this team. I've been on record multiple times on this channel loving the Gobert addition. I just really like what they're doing there. They've got a lot of really solid role players too. It feels like they're built to be one of the best teams in the regular season. Postseason time, we'll see how their youth affects them, but I think that at least in the regular season, they're going to be one of the top 2-3 teams in the Western Conference. For the Portland Trailblazers, I'm going to say that they just barely make the play-in tournament. I'm not going to say they're going to miss the playoffs because they've got Damian Lillard and I trust him more than that. I just think the West is so deep. You've got so many teams that are going to be battling for those top spots. I worry about Dame coming off of that big injury. I think he'll bounce back in a big way, but it might take him some time to get going. You know, you've got a lot of moving parts now too, with Anthony Simons starting at the shooting guard. You've got Josh Hart, who is a late addition to the team. He hasn't played with many of these guys. Jeremy Grant is brand new. Yusuf Nurkic has been hurt off and on, so he could get injured. I just think that the Portland Trailblazers have a lot of question marks. It's a really talented starting 5 if everything works out, but beyond that, not a lot of depth. I just think that they're going to struggle a bit. For the Golden State Warriors, I'm going to say that James Wiseman has a great season and becomes the starter by the end of the year. I think that Wiseman is kind of being slept on by most people. I think that he's, he was the second overall pick. He's going to come in, have a really good year. He's got Steph Curry, he's got Klay Thompson, Draymond Green to play off of. I think he just needs more reps and needs more time. Maybe he doesn't supplant Kevon Looney in that starting lineup because of how good Looney is, but I think Wiseman is slowly going to take more and more minutes to the point where a lot of times he could be closing at the end of games. And finally, for the Washington Wizards, I'm going to say Bradley Beal bounces back in a big way and averages right around 30 points per game again. I think last year was just kind of an anomaly for Bradley Beal. He's got some talent around him now. He's going to have a pretty good season. I think he's going to be right back in the mix for the scoring title. What that means for the Wizards in terms of making the playoffs, we will see, but I think Beal has a great year. And that is one bold prediction for every NBA franchise. Go ahead and comment down below and let me know what I got right or wrong, especially for your favorite team, and give me a bold prediction too for this upcoming season, whether it's for your favorite team or just in general. I'd love to see what you all have to say, but for right now, I appreciate y'all watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. It helps me out more than you can imagine. And like I said, comment down below a bold prediction. Would love to hear what y'all have to say. Appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real One Say It Back.